Hello, everybody. My name is Deacon Tim Donohue. I'm down in Virginia today. My granddaughter was confirmed today by the Bishop of Arlington at her parish, St. John Cardinal Newman Parish, outside of Oakton, Virginia. And I have a reading today for the 30th Sunday of Ordinary Time, a reading from the Gospel of Mark, and then a short reflection. A reading from the Holy Gospel of Mark. As Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a sizable crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up. Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. Jesus said to him in reply, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied to him, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him, "Go your way. Your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. This story about the blind man seems very simple. Jesus asks, "What do you want?" And the blind man replies, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him to go on his way. His sight was restored. A miracle. What else can we take away from this story beyond the understanding of the power of God to perform miracles? For one, I'm thinking of the courage of the blind man. The general belief of that time was that people with infirmities had done something to cause the blindness or the deafness or the deformity, or perhaps their parents had done something. This kind of prejudice, when you think about it, is a double burden for the blind or the handicapped. They suffer the infirmity, but they also suffer from being ridiculed or scorned or made fun of, kind of a second-class citizen. So, in our story, how do you think Bartimaeus found the courage to call out for help? What gave him the strength to risk even more disdain or ridicule or scorn from the people he knew, the people that were around him? Do you think he might have heard about Jesus before? He calls him the Son of David, so he might have heard stories about this wonderful man who was teaching this gospel of love, but was also performing a lot of miracles. Bartimaeus was listening. He found his strength. He risked the scorn and ridicule, and he called out for Jesus. And we know that his call for help was answered. The gospel story should remind us also that we too can call for help. That when we have a situation that we're faced with, or we need a little bit of help with making a decision, making the right decision, we can always ask for help, for Jesus to help us. It took a little bit for Bartimaeus to get up and grab his things and run over to see Jesus. And so too, it might take us time to just stop for a second, to think, and then to call out to Jesus in a silent prayer. But let's take that extra time. It was well worth it for Bartimaeus, wasn't it? Another thing that I know from my own behavior is that sometimes I just I don't see a blind person very often, or a person that's deaf or handicapped. And sometimes I tend to shy away from an encounter with that person. I think about it, and instead of going over and just saying hi, how are you, I might go a different direction or avoid that encounter. I used to do that a lot. I try not to do that anymore because it doesn't make sense to me. We're all children of God, and we should treat each other the same. So now if I see a blind person, I'll actually walk over, and as I'm walking over, I'll say, hello, how are you? My name is Tim Donohue, and I just want to say hi to you. Or a deaf person, or someone in a wheelchair, I'll go over and try to make eye contact with them and say, hi, how are you? How's your day going? I think that's so important for us to think about. The encounter with someone who's not like us sometimes could be a little challenging to us, make us a little uncomfortable. But I think it's doesn't it make sense? Isn't that something that we ought to be doing? I'll tell you, just 2 weeks ago, I was down in Newport, and my nephew was getting married, and so I was down for the wedding. And the day after the wedding, I got up early. It was around 6:45 in the morning, and I went to get a cup of coffee. And as I crossed the street and got on the sidewalk, I looked out, and there was only one other person on the whole street. And that person was in a wheelchair on the far side of the street, headed in the same direction I was. Remember that encounter thing I was talking about, avoiding encounter? I kind of chuckled to myself because I said, we're both going to get to the door of Starbucks at exactly the same time. And we did. And this is when we were hundreds of yards off. So I opened the door, and the man in his black lab made it through the doorway. I was quite impressed with his ability to maneuver the wheelchair. And he came up to the counter, and he ordered his, I don't know what it was. It might have been an iced tea. And he kind of settled it in his lap. And then he went and backed his wheelchair in a corner. And someone in the store, he must have known him, came over and helped him with the straw to get it out of the wrapping and put it in his glass. He was able to pick the cup up and drink from it. And I saw him there, and I said, you know, I'm going to go and ask if I can sit down and talk to him. And you know, sometimes, I'm so selfish sometimes. I think, you know, I'll do him a favor and go over and sit with him. You know, and what kind of thinking is that? And the gift was his gift to me, not mine to him, because he just told me an incredible story about himself. And I find so often when I kind of go out of the way and take a step and I do the right thing, even though it wasn't obvious to me at the beginning, sometimes it just turns into a beautiful encounter. So I learned his name, Paul, from the counter staff who knew him, and I said, how are you, Paul? He said, good, good. And I was immediately struck with his very cheerful attitude. Here he was in a chair. He was probably 5 or 6 years younger than I am. And he'd obviously been in the chair a long time. I asked him how he was so positive. He said, well, it just kind of makes sense, doesn't it? He said, this happened. I broke my neck when I was 19 years old. And he said, I was in college when it happened. And I said, how did you ever recover from that? How did you go to college? He said, well, they were very accommodating. The college helped me with the getting through school. And after college, I couldn't do very much. I had a van, so I drove my van around, and I found a banker that would work with me, and I bought and sold property. And I did that for years and made a living doing that. He said, and then I went down and got a job in New York for a while, and then I came back and applied to Harvard Business School. graduated from Harvard Business School, got a job with Goldman Sachs, and worked with them for a while. And now I live in Newport, and I have a house in Miami. And I'm married, and I have two 18-year-old boys. They're twins. And now, here in Newport, in the summer, I run a camp for disabled children to teach them how to sail. I sat there amazed at his story, at his positive attitude. I said, is God in your life? And he said, yes, God has a very active role in my life. I love to go to church. So, I guess the Timaeus story kind of opened up that story for me. I think we learned that he wanted to be cured of his blindness, and God cured him of his blindness. I think we need to take a look at our own decisions and when we need help and ask for help. And I think we need to take a look at how we treat other people, how we talk to and encounter other people. Bartimaeus teaches us to find the courage to ask for help. Jesus tells us that we all need to do our part, to get up and make an effort to ask him for help. And finally, don't be reluctant to reach out and say hello. Take a moment and sit down for a chat. There are miracles in the stories that we hear from other people that we meet in our everyday lives. But we need to take time to find them. God is with us all the time. He's there if we need to ask him for help. Thank you all for joining me today, and I hope you have a good final week of fall. This is just a beautiful time. I hope you've all got your pumpkins now. You're going to start raking leaves, I'm sure. Take care, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.